Hey guys, welcome to 12 Tone. Today we're going to talk about modal interchange. This is going to be our introduction to non-diatonic chords. Up to now, we've assumed that every chord we play contains only notes in the given key. We did talk a bit about harmonic and melodic minor, which gives us some additional chord choices, but it's nothing compared to the vast array of options we have available to us. Modal interchange can be thought of as borrowing chords from parallel keys. For instance, we could be writing in D major and include a G minor. G minor has a B flat in it, which isn't an available note in D major, but it is in D minor. Most of the time, we borrow like this from minor to major and vice versa. However, if you remember a couple weeks ago we talked about modes. These are a whole series of scales derived from the major scale, and if you want, you can borrow from any of them. Be careful with that though, chords like Phrygian's flat 2 major or Lydian's sharp 4 diminished aren't really a part of most people's harmonic vocabulary, and may sound jarring even though they're theoretically justifiable. Feel free to try them out, but you should probably keep an eye on them to make sure they're behaving. One common trick you can use modal interchange for is avoiding diminished chords in stepwise progressions. This is especially common in major where the diatonic 7 chord may have an unwanted dominant function. For this reason, one of the most common modal interchange chords is the flat 7 major, letting you do stepwise descending chords like this without unwanted diminished dissonance. It's also fairly common to replace the 2 diminished in minor with the 2 minor triad from major for basically the same reason. One thing to keep in mind when borrowing chords from parallel modes is common notes between successive chords. If your borrowed chord contains an altered version of a note in the chord that precedes or follows it, it's gonna sound more noticeable and bizarre to the listener. For instance, G major is the flat 6 chord of B minor, but if we borrow it in B major and play it directly after the 1 chord, the 2 different types of Ds risk confusing the listener. As I've mentioned many times before, that may be what you want, but make sure you're doing it on purpose and for a good reason. Modal interchange, like most advanced harmonic concepts, can be thought of kind of like a spice. In moderation, it adds a sense of excitement and exoticness to your piece, but if you go overboard, it can just make things weird. Too many modal interchange chords, especially in rapid succession, can wind up drowning out the harmonic grounding and make it feel like you've just changed scales entirely. If 2/3 of your harmony is borrowed from the parallel minor, can you really even say you're playing in major? If your progression is, then it's not really G major, is it? Most people will just hear that as G minor. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's a different thing called parallel modulation, which we're going to talk about in a future episode. Well, there's no perfect formula, and I can't say use this many borrowed chords and no more. It's an important concern to remember to make sure that you don't accidentally drift somewhere you didn't want to be. And that's modal interchange. Try the exercises, borrow some chords on your own, and keep on rockin'.